Well, hello there, folks. This is Scott once again, and welcome to another video. This time, it's going to be a review of the very underrated, solid thriller or survival horror film, Crawl. And I have seen this film before. I remember seeing it back in either it was late July or sometime in August, and I remember thinking it was a nicely well done, crafted, solid thriller. And it's nice to see that a creature feature can actually be good again, because lately you've had the very awesomely bad Sharknado types. You had the ones that would air on the Sci-Fi Channel network, which were made with very low budgets and very bad CGI, and maybe some out of the Asylum production. So yeah, this time it's thankfully a well done piece that's in theaters with a very moderate budget. And I'll get to the cast and technical crew on the Wikipedia. The film was directed by a guy named Alexandre Aja. From what I've read on his track record, he's actually done quite a few notable films. Like he actually did a film called High Tension or Haunted Tension, because the director is apparently French actually, and apparently because of that High Tension film, Wes Craven actually called him up to do his remake of The Hills Have Eyes back in 2006. So yeah, he actually did that remake, and he's done other films like he actually did a film called Mirrors, which I have yet to see, but I do like Kiefer Sutherland, so he's in that film, so I need to definitely check that out. He had no involvement in the second Mirrors film, I don't think. And let me go look at his other films, other track record that he's had. He actually did Piranha 3D, the very first one, back in 2010, and he actually did a film with Daniel Radcliffe called Horns, actually. I heard that was a very interesting film, but I have yet to see it, so... And then he actually, wrote and produced, but didn't direct the film Maniac, which is, of course, the 1980 remake. This remake had Elijah Wood in it. And he also wrote and produced a movie called P2, which I have seen. It was kind of interesting. And so, yeah, he's had a pretty solid track record, Alexander Aja. He also produced the film along with Sam Raimi. He's a very notable, well-known name because he did the first three Spider-Man films. He did the original Evil Dead trilogy. I believe he produced the remake as well too. And also he the film's 10 years old now. He did Drag Me to Hell as well. Drag Me to Hell as well. So yeah, and then apparently the other producer was Craig J. Flores. So yeah. A nice little producing team right there. And then the film was written by Michael and Shawn Rasmussen, or Razamin, or however you pronounce them, if that's how you pronounce their names. And the film focuses on these two actors, Kyle Scodelario and Barry Piper, and they have actually both previously worked together on the Maze Runner films. Kyle was in all three of them. Barry didn't appear till the second one, and I believe he was in the third one as well. I have seen the second one. I saw a little bit of the first, and I saw a little bit of the third, and I saw how it ended, so I probably would have to, kind of get into it if I want to do a review for those three films right there, that trilogy specifically. So, then you have the cinematography done by Maxime Alexandre, or Alexander, since it's technically French, I guess. It was edited by Elliot Greenberg. Production company was Ghost House Pictures, Raimi Productions, and of course it was distributed by Paramount Pictures. Paraprix, as I like to call them. And the budget for this film was only $13.5 million, and yet it looked like it could have been done in the 20s. But getting into the film itself, I really enjoyed this film. I think it was highly underrated, and then while looking back, I'm glad I gave it a second watch because I wanted to get more of a fresh perspective on this film, and I really wanted to give it some really good in-depth thoughts. And so, really, I think this creature feature worked very well. I mean, there were some minor nitpicks I had with the film, but overall, it didn't deter my enjoyment of this film. So, and I think what made this work was the suspense, the tension, and just the fact that they were able to set this in the crawl space. They were able to be very effective. It was handled very well. And not only that, you have a hurricane that also becomes kind of a character itself, because it's a very dangerous hurricane. It's in a crawl space, and waters are rising, and they're using nature as an elemental thing in this film, which I thought was very interesting. And I think what made this film really work was the two main characters of Haley and Dave Keller, both portrayed by Kaya Scodelario and Barry Piper. They made this film work. You know, they have really good chemistry, and they had a very believable father and daughter relationship that you can empathize with, because they both have their flaws, but in the end, they're likable characters to a degree, and that's what you kind of want to root for in that sense. But I guess I'll kind of dig into the plot. I don't want to concentrate on that film too much because I'll definitely get to the pros and cons in this film. So let's begin here. Apparently, Kyle Sedukalero's character, she plays Haley Keller. She is basically a competitive swimmer, and she's lost this little training session that she's prepared herself for. And while this is going on, she gets a call from her sister Beth, who has informed her that a Category 5 hurricane is on the collision course with where they're at. They're in Florida, and she's basically telling her to get out of the state. But unfortunately, she mentions that their father Dave has yet to text or respond to Beth's phone calls or texts. And back in the day, both Haley and father, or Dave really, had a very close relationship back in the day, because he was actually her coach that encouraged her to pursue being a competitive swimmer and whatnot. But unfortunately, we of course would find out that they have had kind of a falling out, and the family's basically gone their separate ways, and they're divided pretty much. But despite all that, Haley is still concerned about the sake of her father, so she tries to drive around during this very intense storm, and she she actually is able to drive around the evacuation routes to check on her father. She tries to go to his condo where he's been living since he and her mother had divorced, but unfortunately he doesn't find him there. But she does find the dog by the name of Sugar at the condo, and Dave's nowhere there to be found. So eventually Haley decides to go to check out their old family home to see if he's there. And the storm is gathering more intense as every waking minute. And then eventually she does go into the house. She descends into the crawl space, and she does eventually find Dave, who is unconscious and pretty badly wounded. In fact, there's a broken bone in his leg, and yet she has to do her best to try to drag him out of that crawl space. But unfortunately, she's abruptly cut off by these large and ravenous alligators that are just without mercy, and they actually try chasing her. She actually drops her phone. She has to quickly drag them to a particular crawl space where there's pipes around where the alligators can't get to them. And eventually he does regain consciousness, and Haley does everything she possibly can to keep her father alive and to find a way to navigate around the alligators before she and her father drown, because the hurricane becomes even more intensified and the crawl space begins to fill up with water. So they have to get out of there, otherwise they're going to drown and die along with these alligators. And she tries to go another route within the crawl space and tries to retrieve her phone, which she does to try to contact the emergency or 911. But unfortunately, she's grabbed by an alligator I think on her thigh, or somewhere on her thigh, I believe. And it actually grabs her leg. But anyways, she's able to find a screwdriver, and I believe she stabs it in the eye with that, and that's why the alligator lets her go, and she's bleeding pretty badly. And she has to crawl into a particular area so she can not be spotted by the alligator. And eventually, she's able to use this particular light, which is, I don't know about these lights, but apparently it's self-charging. Like, she has to wind it up to get the light up. And she actually tries her best to try to signal and see if people are around there, because she spots these looters that are actually robbing this very small convenience store. And there's like 3 people there. There's like 2 guys and one female. And one of the males actually spots it, but apparently while this is going on, the alligators head towards that area. So one of them does see the light, but apparently the female gets killed first, and she's basically these people are gator bait. They're not able to help her in any form. And even eventually the people that she talked to earlier, like Wayne, for example, one of the people that was trying to divert all the traffic out of the evacuation zone, they eventually come down to that area, the Corral Lake where she's at, And while they do what they can to try to, well, eventually Wayne does kind of find them, but eventually he actually gets pulled down by one of those alligators. And then the same thing with forget what the other guy's name is. I think it's Wayne and oh yeah, Pete. Pete. It's funny. I was talking to Don about this, and I'll kind of get into that later. But Pete apparently, but they're both taken out by the alligators pretty badly. Um, and then basically her and Dave try to formulate this plan to try to see if they can get out of there. Like there was one plan to get out of the you know secondary exit where there's like uh, there's a hatch, but apparently it's been blocked by this box on top, so they're not able to do that. And basically, Dave and Haley decide to find a way to use Dave uses a shovel to kind of distract the alligators to get them out of there, and he actually does eventually kill one with the shovel when the part of the floor collapses on him, and he kills it with a shovel, and then. Haley decides she's going to try to get out of there by going through the storm drain, which is where the alligators have been coming out, supposedly. She eventually makes her way down that area, and she also knows they've been nesting and laying eggs. And then she notices Wayne's body has kind of floated despite being gator bait. She actually retrieves his gun, and then apparently, surprise, an alligator comes out of nowhere and actually chomps on her arm, but she's able to shoot the alligator like several times, preventing it from ripping her hand off pretty much. So eventually she's able to somehow, with her use of her swimming ability, she's able to swim through the storm drain, eventually come out of there, rescue her father, and eventually, try to escape. They're free of the crawl space. They even spot the looter's boat, which is still in there, and they have to. But apparently, they have to hurry up, be crafty enough to be still, so the alligators don't see them. They eventually get on there, but unfortunately, the floodwaters break by, and it pushes them back into their own house, and they get separated again, and it even separates, their dog Sugar. And both Dave and both Haley navigate around the house. Eventually, Dave does rescue Sugar, but unfortunately, he gets attacked by one of the alligators, and one of his arms get ripped open. And then, right when Haley and Dave meet, they have, of course, the conversation where apparently he actually never sold the house because it was hard to let go of their family home and whatnot. But eventually they get separated again, where she's pushed into another room when she tried to. Actually, no, I take it back. She was actually in another room when the floodwaters were rising, and she actually tries to, use a flare to signal, but unfortunately it was an alligator, and it crushes right through the window, and the door to that room closes, and they're both trapped in there, and it actually. Haley and the alligator, or actually the alligator, has her down on another basically has her on a shoulder, I think it was, and she's basically in this death roll, but somehow Haley's able to grab one of the flares that's still lit up and stabs the alligator in the eye with that flare, and eventually she attempts to swim outside the house, where she's narrowly avoided by another alligator that's trying to maul at her, but luckily the storm and the tense winds push that away, and she eventually, gets saved by her father. They're on the roof, and a rescue helicopter comes by, and she's able to use the very last flare, signal it, and basically that's your ending right there. So like I said before, the strong point of this film is the character dynamics between Haley and Dave Keller. Like, the characters are very, you could say they're maybe slightly flawed, but, they're headstrong, they're tough, they're believable, and you can relate to it, Like I said, despite the fact that they haven't really communicated with that much because of certain family problems, they do their best to rely on each other to get out of this, very dire and desperate situation, which could easily kill them both. And The thing is, it's real in a way, somewhat realistic. Apparently, the critics said this film was unrealistic, and I kind of disagree. Maybe the plot overall is maybe a little unrealistic, but it had relatable and realistic characters that that you kind of root for because they're not in your face or over the top. They've had their downturns in their life. Like Haley lost the training session, and she has yet to speak about their father because maybe they have similar interests and whatnot. But I think it's because of the character dynamics between them. That's what makes this film work. Is the two main characters that the film relies on, and they play off well each other. Kaya Scodelario and Barry Piper really carry this film very well, and Dave, despite probably having some mess ups in his life, he's honest, he's relatable, he wants nothing but the best for his daughter, like he would in real life. And there's even a good quote where he says, we're stubborn, but we don't give up. And that's a character that you want to root for. And the same with Haley. She may kind of rebel against some of his ideas. Like, for example, he doesn't want her to go to the storm drain, but it's pretty much their only option because the people that they were trying to get their attention, they all died. They were gator bait. And their one plan B exit was blocked by the box that was sitting on top of that hatch. So yeah. So eventually she's able to use her swimming training to basically evade the alligators and evade this one that was almost coming at her. And but yeah, she's able to help her father in the end, and that's what you root for. She's a very strong and dependable person. Despite the problems they had with in the past, she's willing to make it right. She's willing to try to do the right thing. That's what I believe one part of the film that's realistic. What's also realistic is the tension in this film. The fact that these alligators are pretty ravenous. Like the first time when you see them, they just show up out of nowhere and almost snap at her. That it was done very well. And for the most part, I think they make the use of some good practical effects. There was probably very minimal CGI used, and I'll get to the cons of that. I guess you could say that's one of the cons, is that the CGI, I can tell, was it was noticeable, but for the majority of the film, the film uses its practical effects, especially the broken bone and Dave's leg. Like he has to make a splint with the wrench that he has to try to put the bone back into place, and it's kind of gross a little bit, but it's realistic. And then a part when he rescues Sugar and his arm gets snapped on by the alligator, and eventually it gets ripped off. You really feel bad for the guy of all the stuff he's trying to endure and trying to get out and trying to rescue his own pet. I mean, man, it's very gory, and I think it does a good job on that. It does a real good job on the practical effects. The alligators and the breaking of the limbs, the blood and everything. It's done very well. But like I said, in the flaws, which I'll discuss now, I think honestly there were noticeable moments of CGI in there, which I can tell. But that's one of the minor nitpicks. A little overuse of CGI in scenes where I think they should have stuck to using the practical effects. But for the most part, the visuals are done very well. And let's see, the other minor flaw, I guess you could say, is basically gosh, what is it? Oh yeah, the music. I mean, the music was done by this Max Arouge and Stefan Thumb. I mean, it's there, but there's nothing like really memorable. It's like the part where the alligators show up. That's where the score intensifies, and I guess that's when it's used effectively. But I feel like it kind of lacks something. It's just, like I said, not memorable. That's one of the things. And I feel like pretty much all the other than those two characters, pretty much all the characters, they really don't do a whole lot, and they're just pretty much, just food for the gators. They're pretty much just gator bait. And I think I wish the ending there could have been something to the ending. And speaking of which, when I was at that live stream with at Dawn, his name is Pete, he mentioned that apparently the Blu-ray will have an alternate ending, so that would be very interesting. Hopefully it's not a downbeat ending, because I rooted for these characters. I wanted them to escape out of this horrific situation. So hopefully, that's not the alternate ending. But I felt like the ending could have been, a little more like maybe they could have been at peace. Like maybe they could have had a mini family reunion of Beth, Emily, and Dave, of course. So yeah, just to kind of complete that, that relationship dynamic because the film is very. I'll get to the pros. Like I said before, the chemistry between Kaya and Barry, there it's done very well. It's a very moving and touching and very realistic relationship between them. That's definitely the strong points of the film, and the suspense, the tenseness of the fact that the storm drain, they're trapped in this crawl space. They're dealing with a very intense Category 5 hurricane that's going to be just completely obliterating all the structures around them, and they have to get out of there fast, otherwise they're going to die. They're going to be flooded. Yeah, that's how I look at this. It's just, excuse me. It's very effective, and not only that, Aja really did his shots very well. Like for example, when Haley's trying to escape in this one scene to try to lure the gator into a trap, like she goes into to the bathroom to try to get into the shower so she can lure the alligator into the shower itself. Like she's able to, escape it. Like she jumps off, and I think the gator tries to bite her, but it doesn't work. Like there's that overhead shot where you see, and it's done very well. And she's able to get out of there. She's able to close the glass doors and trap that alligator in there. And then the part where she's trapped in this one room when she was using the flare to try to signal what she thought was a helicopter, but it was, of course, a gator. She engages in this duel when the alligator has her by the shoulder, I think it was, in this little death row. The camera is also rolling around with it, and it's done very well. And like I said before, the majority of the film, besides the little lousy CGI, it uses its budget very effectively, and it almost makes it look like it's a little higher, too. So they did a very good job of the budget and making it look like it was in the $20 million range instead of the $13.5 million that it cost to make. And I don't know if I can say anything else that's great, but just overall, it used it used the suspense, the tension, and the characters are definitely worth rooting for. They're strong, they're not over the top, they're not in your face. They're very well developed. They're not like Brie Larson, where she's the hero, and some other strong female leads that are just one-dimensional and have nothing to their personality. Haley and Kaya Scodelario really gives her a very realistic personality, very sympathetic and understandable and relatable character. Same with Dave. He has his flaws, but he remains headstrong and determined to get himself out of the situation along with her daughter. His daughter. So sorry about that. But yeah, I don't know what else I can say. But if you missed this, it's too bad. But if it's still playing at the dollar theaters and whatnot, give this movie a shot. I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's one of the most recently well done creature features that I've seen. That's not Sharknado levels bad or Sci-Fi Channel level bad or Asylum level bad. It uses its budget, it uses its plot and tension very well. I definitely will get this on Blu-ray whenever it comes out. Maybe I'll wait when the price drops, whenever Black Friday happens. But if you haven't seen it, if you see it on YouTube, to rent, give it a watch. I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's that well done of a film, and definitely warranted something of a second viewing for sure. Because even though it made money, it didn't make a whole lot of money. And that's too bad, It was a well-done creature feature survival horror film that used its elements to the best, and it did it very well. And I hope to see more from Alexandre Aja, because supposedly, I don't know if it's true, if he was rumored to do the new Nightmare on Elm Street remake, but you know what? I'd be curious to look forward to that. At least it'll be better than the one with Jackie Earle Haley and that director who pretty much insulted fans as well before. So yeah. But anyway, folks, I think I'm going to end it right here because I don't really have much else to say other than that. If it's still available to see, go for it. It's definitely well worth the price. And it's definitely worth a rental for sure. So But yeah, I'm going to end it here, and you'll definitely see some reviews of Airplane and Airplane 2, the sequel. So be on the lookout for that, folks. So I will see you later, okay? Later.